Good morning, all. All right, so this is a proper morning, all. So we have just the two games tonight. So we'll take a quick look at that, and then we'll talk about the news of the day as some teams are cleaning out their lockers and getting ready for the off season, and all the questions start, and we start getting into the whole free agency, contract extensions, draft, all that kind of talk. So two games tonight. They're starting within a half an hour of each other. They're both early. So if these go into like double, triple overtime, shouldn't be that late for me to get videos posted. So Toronto and Montreal starts at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific. And they just played last night, and Toronto won it. So Toronto looking to get that 3-1 stranglehold so they can come back home, take it out in 5. And, all the Canadian teams can then sit around and go, hey, so we're done. And/or Montreal is looking to even up the series tonight and prove that this series is going to go on for a while, and the Jets can go ahead, put their feet up, and relax while they wait for their opponent in the next round. It should be interesting to see what happens in this one tonight. Caulfield, he's due for a goal. It just feels like he's due. I know he just made his debut last night, but every time he got the puck, he went to the net. Eventually, one of those are going to go in. And eventually, I think Jack Campbell's going to get some respect as having played pretty darn well in these playoffs, but who knows? We'll see. So yeah, Toronto up 2-1, and they're going to be looking to keep that killer instinct going for Game 4 tonight. Then at 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific. So 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern, we get Carolina back at home against Nashville. So I'm wearing the reverse retro Whalers and all that because Carolina probably holds serve. This series is really unpredictable as of games 3 and 4 and the way Nashville won them. So if Carolina wants to win, do it in regulation. Apparently in overtime, Nashville's just got this thing going on this year. So we'll see how this one turns out. But for Carolina, holding serve at home is really important because if you lose this one tonight, then you have to go back to Nashville again, and that crowd's going to be really fired up knowing they could be getting into the next round. This playoffs has been just as unpredictable as all the rest, really, honestly, and I do enjoy that with my hockey because when there's unpredictable results, I think it tends to draw more eyeballs to the game, where you'll see people going, "Wait, what happened?" I thought, and I'm talking like people that maybe weren't paying all that much attention. Where a series like this, where Nashville could come back and knock out Carolina, yeah, that definitely is an interesting aspect of this year's playoffs. So I wanted to do a quick overview of the Winnipeg-Edmonton series that we just witnessed. Now, for the Jets, they had 2 empty net goals in the first game, so that 4-1 score ends up being uglier than it should have. It was basically a 2-1 game with a couple empty net goals. Your 3 stars in that game were Hellebuck, Tony Nato, and Puljujarvi. So that was a close game. The Oilers just don't quite get there. And then in Game 2, the Jets shut them out in overtime, 1-0. So your 3 stars are Stastny, Hellebuck, and Smith. So going back to Winnipeg, it looked like this series was going to be low scoring and tight, close games. Well, the close games remained, but the low scoring didn't. So in Game 3, the Jets win in overtime, 5-4 in overtime. I said twice. Ehlers, Morrissey, and Draisaitl being the 3 stars of that game. Now, for Game 4, last night, of course, triple overtime, 4-3, triple overtime win for the Jets. I don't know how many times I could say triple overtime, but it was insane. And so the 3 stars last night were Scheifele, Wheeler, and Draisaitl, whereas the night before it was Ehlers, Morrissey, and Draisaitl. It just, the depth of the Jets seemed to be a difference maker. And then you've got the Lowry line and the way that they played against the McDavid line was just fantastic. Early on in the series, Paul Maurice was trying Scheifele's line against the top line. And when that kind of started to look like it might be falling apart, the McDavid was picking it up. He goes to the Lowry line, and Lowry shows why he gets paid some money by the Jets. So if you look at the scoring for the Oilers in this series, Draisaitl, 4 games, 2 goals, 3 assists for 5 points. McDavid ends up with a goal and 3 assists, 4 points in 4 games. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, a goal and an assist in 4 games. Puljujarvi had a goal and an assist in 4 games. And Ethan Bear, who was just, considered to be like one of the best young defensemen, Bear ends up going without a point in this series. He's a -4, and he was prominent with a turnover in last night's game too. So, it's going to be interesting to see what they do going forward. Smith ends up 0-4, probably the end of his run with Edmonton. 9-12 save percentage, 2.4 goals against. Smith played well, just the goalie at the other end happened to be Connor Hellebuyck. Hellebuyck is in the 3 stars twice in this series. Should have been in there 3 times. He should have been one of the stars last night, I thought. But Draisaitl gets that 3rd star instead, and I wouldn't take it away from Scheifele or Wheeler either. So, McDavid has come out and said that, and after the loss said he doesn't think that the Oilers need big changes, and that they're not that far off. And this is where it's interesting because they do get swept. None of the games were really lopsided. The Jets just managed to win 3 of them in overtime. And like I said, this one was 4-1, but 2 of those goals were empty netters. But we've seen before where a team looks like it's not that far off, and then the following season everything falls apart. So I do wonder whether or not the Oilers do make big changes, or if they look at this roster, they look at this result, and they say, we were close. It was a different kind of playoff. The Jets just had Hellebuyck. We didn't have Hellebuyck. And maybe they go out and they try to find a number 1 goaltender that can match up against Hellebuyck. So that may happen. Maybe they're in on like a Peter Mrazek out of Carolina. Maybe they go out and they find a young goaltender that can't be protected, like Drieger in Florida. Maybe they pick somebody up that they feel they can use as their number 1 goaltender going forward. And yet, I would not say goaltending was the only reason that Winnipeg wins this series, because, again, Smith gets this team to overtime 3 games in a row. And a 9-12 save percentage is pretty solid. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Last night's game, Darnell Nurse had an overtime period where he played 15 minutes. And he had a 4-minute and 47-second shift. It was remarkable because I remember that I kept thinking, okay, he's going to be gassed. Nope, he's going to be gassed. Nope, he is in incredible shape. So last night, he played 62 minutes and 7 seconds of hockey, which is the 3rd longest in terms of ice time in a game since we started recording ice time in a game. Seth Jones, 65.06 in the last playoffs. And Zubov, 63 minutes and 51 seconds. Is number 2 on the list. So 65 minutes for Seth Jones, 63 minutes for Zubov, 62 minutes for Nurse. Respectable, very solid performance for Darnell Nurse, who doesn't get in the 3 stars either of any of the games. So, yeah. And I think the one thing about that is, as admirable as that is, I see that and I think, now if they had another defenseman that could have played that kind of time, and if they had another, horse on that blue line, who knows? And that's where the question of if Oscar Klefbom had played in this series, could things have been just a little bit different? Because when you're losing in overtime like this, you're just so close and yet so far away, right? But we'll have plenty of time this summer to analyze what happened in Edmonton, and we'll see what Ken Holland does. Zdeno Chara has not decided on what he's going to do with his future. Chara, at age 44, may very well decide to retire, but that hasn't been decided yet. He's going to talk to his wife and kids first, and then make up his mind on what he's going to do. He averaged 18 minutes and 19 seconds this year for Washington, so it's not like he wasn't being used. It's not like he wasn't useful. But it'll be interesting to see if, A, he wants to come back to the Caps, B, if the Caps have room for him. Considering that 5-game loss against Boston, Washington may want to retool everything. And I'm not talking major changes, just, tweaks here and there to try to turn themselves back to where they were in 2018. A 2018 team that kind of came out of nowhere to win that Stanley Cup. And I say that because in 2017, the Caps were seen as a favorite, and then they lost. And then in 2018, it looked like parts of their roster might have been downgraded, and then they won the Stanley Cup. So, yeah. Sometimes it's just these changes that we don't think much of at the time end up making a big difference. Ovechkin also expects to sign an extension, and he was dealing with leg and back issues during the playoffs. Eller had a groin injury during the playoffs. Karlsson, I think it was a knee with Karlsson. I was like, I don't have to put all of it up here. But yeah, there were a lot of guys playing hurt in that Capitals series. And I'm sure there are players on the Bruins right now that while they're resting, getting ready for the next round, that they're injured as well. And this is something I've said going into the playoffs, is that we don't know what these guys are playing through, and we'll probably find out after the playoffs are done what they've been playing through. And there's probably more injuries this year than normal because it is a squashed schedule. Pat Maroon has been fined for unsportsmanlike conduct at the end of last night's game. I know it was unpopular with people, and the end of the game last night was kind of ugly, but the rest of the game wasn't nearly as bad, although McDonough gets fined for a cross-check on Marchment. They both got the maximum allowed. It's fine, which isn't very much, but that's in the CBA. It's not going to change. And so McDonough gets fined, Maroon gets fined. So last night it was Tampa Bay that was stepping over that line a bit, and again, we'll see what happens in Game 6. But it's weird because it felt like that game was cleaner than the one before, and we see a couple of fines out of that one. So it's definitely a series that's been hotly contested between the two Florida teams. It's been exactly as advertised. Oliver Wahlstrom may not play tomorrow for the New York Islanders. There's speculation that might allow Travis Zajac to get into the series for the first time. The Islanders, the good news for them is that they're ahead in this series. They've kept Sidney Crosby to 1 goal and 1 assist through 5 games. It's been a remarkable series overall. And so if the Islanders are going to close this out, just, make sure that Sid doesn't have any room out there, and don't tick off Malkin. Don't get Malkin to go beast mode. Just keep him playing well, but not necessarily playing like the world beater he can be. So yeah, Wahlstrom, if he's out, the Islanders are one team that absorbs injuries better than almost everybody else. So that's good for them. And in closing, David Perron of the St. Louis Blues has revealed that, yes, he did have COVID. So he tested positive, and he did actually have it, and he actually was symptomatic as well. So that was all legit. I know there was speculation about whether or not it was a false positive, but yes, he had it. Yes, he was symptomatic. He feels that if they'd forced a Game 5, he probably could have been cleared to come back and play in it. But yeah, so rough season for St. Louis, ends in a sweep. Rough season for Edmonton, ends in a sweep. And I think it's interesting too that the 2016 and 2017 Cup winner was Pittsburgh, and right now they're on the verge of possibly being eliminated. 2018 was Washington, they're out. 2019 was St. Louis, they're out. 2020's Tampa, they're embroiled in a heated war with Florida, which isn't over yet. So yeah, winning the Stanley Cup one year doesn't necessarily give you any special privilege going forward that you're going to win the next one. But yeah, so, and of course 2015, that was Chicago, and they haven't been in the playoffs since 2018. So yeah, and 2014 was LA. I don't want to keep going back. LA didn't make the playoffs either, so sometimes when you win the Stanley Cup, and that's why I've said, really enjoy it. Soak it in. When your team wins it, really enjoy it, because you don't know when it'll come back again. All right, there you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, hopefully my allergies get a little better, so the next video I won't have to pause so much because all the sneezing takes place. I think the cottonwood is getting bad. I've always had an allergy with cottonwood. It's just, I would come home from school and there'd be cottonwood everywhere, and I just looked like I'd been crying by the time I got home. So yeah, thank you guys so much for that, for not minding the little cuts here and there. But hey, let me know your thoughts regarding any of these items on the board. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happen upon this video. And yes, it's a much lighter night tonight, so I've got some other video ideas for today. Keep your eyes peeled for that. And thank you guys so much for those who have subscribed, and for those who haven't, by all means do so. I will talk to you again soon.